I watched 365 films in the last 365 days. Here's what I learned. Not a lot. A bit of context. As a mid-20s man,
You sure about that?
I don't really have any hobbies, to be honest. I don't even have one, to be quite honest with you. So I thought, do you know what? All I do currently is spend my free time scrolling in social media in existential dread. I'm going to force myself to have some form of a hobby um, instead of just rotting my brain away. I thought films, they're accessible. I'm already paying for all these streaming services. There's an entire library out there. So I thought, I'm going to get stuck in. I'm going to watch until my eyes bleed. Um, and I think the main takeaway I kind of discovered is that films perhaps are the best hobby you can have because they're the great equalizer. Everybody watches films or has seen a film in their life. I mean, or maybe not everybody on planet Earth, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you can have a conversation with almost anyone about any film, you can watch different films with different people and kind of get some form of value from whatever you've watched, even if it's the biggest piece of dog shit. You can still find some joy in it. And often the absolute worst films are some of the best. If you watch them with the right people, that is, they can be funny as fuck, man. I think that's kind of what I discovered. I watched like Adam Sandler's Zohan with my grandparents, laughing our asses off. It was so funny. It was an absolute great time. But then you can watch a really introspective, melancholic film on your own and just be plunged into existential dread and what's the meaning of life. Or you can watch a big action blockbuster with your friends or a horror movie with your friends like The Substance and, recoil in absolute fear and at the grossness. So I think that's kind of the main takeaway I took away is that there's always something to watch. There's always something different, a new perspective to take in. And, you can learn so much about stories of different people around the world. There's a lot, international film is definitely a growing area. But it's always something you can talk about and bond with people. I was a big believer that like sport is one of the best hobbies you can have because it's like an infinite conversation you can kind of have with anyone. You can always talk to people about the latest game or whatever, but with sport it's a big time commitment and you don't always get time out. Trust me, some of the teams I support is unless your team's winning and doing well, when they're doing crap every week, you're just miserable. You have to go and talk about how rubbish they are, and it's just like a negative echo chamber. You're just constantly in this negative space. You're kind of dependent. Your enjoyment is dependent on something you can't control, and also people are really fucking annoying about sports. They get weirdly, tribal and caveman monka brain about it. But with films, there's always new films coming out. There's always a new film to enjoy. But you kind of, you can be more selective. You can go, I'm not into watching this genre of film, or I don't really like this director. But then you can get that equal amount of hype and excitement you would get from a sporting event if, like, your favorite director is releasing a new film after a few years with an amazing cast. That's, you know, that's the bonus of having films as a hobby. I mean, it's less about each individual film that I might have watched throughout the 365 days. It's more about cumulatively what did I gain from being consistent and watching them. Is just a constant source of enjoyment, being challenged, something to look forward to. You can kind of be like, oh yeah, that you can go on Letterboxd and log it and think like, oh, that film's good, and then interact with your friends and family socially. Like, they can go like, I can't believe you gave Grown Ups 1 star. If someone gives Grown Ups 1 star, you're getting fucking blocked on Letterboxd right now. That is one of the greatest pieces of art ever made. It's the Mona Lisa of the cinema industry. But then you can, and then look forward and plan to watch new films coming out and have an opinion on them that nobody asks for and nobody cares for, but you can still have it. You can scream it into the digital void on Letterboxd or Instagram, whatever. And you don't have to be a Letterboxd film bro try hard, who's literally sweating trying to log every 1940s French black and white film. I don't need to do that. You can kind of enjoy films however you want, you know. You can watch just literally any kind of genre, any kind of film you like. You don't have to play by, you know, a specific set of rules. You can kind of treat your film, you know, consumption however you like. There's no algorithm forcing you. Yeah, Netflix has got an algorithm like, yo, you might like that. Just ignore it. Just ignore the Netflix algorithm. Kind of go out and seek what you like. It's kind of on your own terms, you know. There's too many algorithms nowadays forcing you to think, you know, such strong opinions or thoughts on a topic. You know, whatever, even if it's sports, you know, you're always, you know, having to have such strong opinions on players or games or coaches, managers. It's just like, that's the problem with algorithmic social media, is it takes out the kind of unique perspective you may have, or just like, you know, having a singular opinion or thought on one thing and not being coerced into that, you know. Spotify, I think, is terrible for that with his AI plans. You know, you go on a playlist and it's like made for you by AI. It's like, no, I want stuff that I don't already know, or that's like algorithmically thinks I'm gonna like. I want to be challenged with new interesting stuff. And that's kind of something films do, is they don't have such a, you know, they don't fit into such small, tight little, you know, boxes that could be algorithmically, scientifically coerced into your brain and your selection. They kind of, you know, they stand on their own as art pieces. It's like walking around a gallery, but you're the curator. What am I even talking about? I'm going way deep into this than I thought. This is supposed to be funny, believe it or not.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Sorry, I just had to cut myself off there. I was just rambling into the abyss. Guess I've got some unresolved issues with algorithms that I should probably seek therapy for urgently. Not just that as well. But in summary, I think films are a great hobby, and watching them consistently brings a consistent level of joy and a consistent challenging to your current, you know, it's a way to get an interesting perspective into new areas of life, new ways of living. And if you're someone like me with crippling ADHD, I can't read more than 5 pages before I'm out on, I'm scrolling on TikTok. Like, but with a film, it's a good middle ground. It's like an entry level gateway drug into consuming more, you know, more intentional media, perhaps. It's so depressing that we're at this stage now where, you know, people have got to find hobbies and force themselves out of the algorithmic, you know, chokeholds. Everyone is so, like, absolutely brain rotted away. They don't even have any self-control left. But yeah, in summary, watch more films. Talk to people about more films. Let's bring back a bit more of a film culture, a cinema culture. Let's make cinemas our churches again, our media churches. I love a cinema. Yeah, that's the summary. So I learned they're a great hobby, great equalizer, and a way to challenge your current thoughts that isn't going to rot your brain away. Dannoccino, out.